This is such a privileged space. And it isn't because I'm standing here in front of the room, because the truth is you're not going to see me here a lot today at all. And that is by design. Because the truth is that it is about you, every single one of you, and what it is that you're healed to bring and build in the world. And I have the honor and privilege of having a team that has you and that has me. And Matt is one reflection, one color, one dimension. Shalonda, another reflection, color, dimension. Jay, another reflection, color, dimension. And, you know, I remember in the early days when I was doing trainings like this, right, sitting in the seats, as you all are sitting in the seats now, and I did not see the diaspora cross the stage. Anybody hear what I'm saying? The information fly, right? Take nothing away. But when we started to talk about the future and the world and global domination and all of those wonderful things that we could get to do with our success, quote unquote, I didn't see the souls that I felt reflected the planet. If you look around the room at each other, you reflect the planet, right? If you see who is in front of the room, you reflect the planet, and that is by design, because I believe that this is what the future looks like, us, all right? So I love you, Matt. I thank you. I thank you, and I'm going to add my intention to the bowl. Lainey, thank you. Thank you. So now I have the privilege to bring in our keynote for the day. And it is my great joy because, again, part of this commitment to the global movement is about bridging worlds. And he is a world bridger and a world transformer. And humble in his spirit, but huge in his impact. And I'll talk a little bit about his credentials. And again, you'll read about them in the folders that you all have today. But, you know, long time activist from like the age of like 8 or 9, huge commitment to environmental activism, built one of the first green businesses in the internet space, so internet pioneer transformer, really renowned for his ability to spot trends and understand what's happening in the world of technology. And he's brought his passion and his commitment to the larger world to engage in larger infrastructures and helping them understand big data and the ways in which they can move big data in the world in the context of marketing and sales. But beyond all of those things, who he really is the truth. Y'all hear me? The truth. And I know sometimes we have the belief that people who occupy these big rooms and occupy these big spaces don't carry our values. But the truth is that more and more they do. And it's our opportunity to find them. To find them. Right? He's also here today because every single one of you in the context of what you're building, base and community is important. Is that true? Audience, important. Right? Whatever you're wanting to lift in the world, you need partners. You need people who share your values, who are willing to take advantage of engaging in what it is that you have to offer, so that your representation is met with people who are willing and wanting to receive, right, the ways in which you're representing in the world. And so he's going to talk more with us today about it after he shares his story. And we'll have some time for Q&A, right? So he's going to share, we'll have some time, he and I, and then you all will have some time with Josh. It gives me so much joy, so much pleasure, so much excitement to present to you all the amazing Josh Knauer.
So I wanted to start, and I'm going to take off my mic for 1 second, because I need to cross over. I think this is a really amazing idea to set intention. I always talk about technology and community and all that stuff, and quite frankly, just getting back to spirit and remembering the intentions of why we're here. I just want to thank you for bringing us to this space. It is such a pleasure to be here in front of this group of people. Ra, thank you so much for that introduction. We'll talk about that in a second. I want to acknowledge other people that are here that are really, you never can make a journey alone. And as you know, the work that we all do, the struggle, the change, all the grit that we face every day, you have to have a support system around you to help you do that effectively. So I want to acknowledge my wife and 2 kids, Adam and Olivia are here. And today is a really special day. Adam's 10th birthday is today, so we're celebrating in New York. And we came in from Pittsburgh just for this event so that we could all be here and celebrate his birthday in New York. So thank you all for letting us do that, which is really exciting. And I don't even know if I can do this without choking up Lori, but I wanted to acknowledge Lori Hanau, who's here, who's been a coach and a mentor of mine for many years now and has really helped me through this journey that I've been on quite a bit. And thank you, Lori. Much love. So when you get introduced at these types of events, and I'm sure if you read my bio before, we all focus on the achievements and what people have done and how they've got, the great things. And if you read mine, it's like, wow, he started, his first business when he was in elementary school, and started a student environmental organization, and then, and then it grew to 40,000 people just magically, and then, started this nonprofit organization when he was a freshman in college, and just magically grew into like the largest first internet thing for nonprofits, and that was great. And I built a company that, went from, early stage of trying to, very early on in e-commerce and and then all of a sudden I sold it, right, and in 2002 to a publicly traded company, wow. I'm an advisor to the White House, wow, all these things. So the thing the story that is not there is the story. So I stand up before you and you could say, oh wow, look at all that stuff. And the fact of the matter is that's not who I am, right? I'm not the stuff, I'm the journey. And I want to make sure that as we're talking here today about transformation and about all the rest, that we remember the basics. And so for me, the basics, I always have to find some sort of, ooh, yay, Mazel Tov, woo! That's right. I think I've just married all of you now. Sorry, honey, we have a few more people coming back with us, I think. So for me, everything comes back to nature. Because quite frankly, interacting with people is great, and interacting with companies is great, and all presentations and all the rest. But for me, I have to go back to nature. That's where I'm grounded. That's sort of what gives me my strength. And in order to talk about transformation, I want to talk about a really simple concept. So once again, these achievements that you hear people that stand up in front of rooms like this and talk about, right? They all start somewhere. And that story and journey of how you get from here to there is really important, because when you're sitting in the audience, you should really be thinking about how can the ideas that are being presented, that story that or journey that somebody else has been on, how can that apply to me in some way? And it's not going to apply one-to-one. It won't be an exact thing. You won't be able to do the exact thing I did, and I won't be able to do the exact thing you do. But the point is, if we can all go back and think about our story and how it starts and how it progresses, I think it's a really powerful thing. So I'm going to share with you a bit of my story. And talk a little bit about get beyond, this acorn, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's in the White House, or whatever it is, right, to this oak tree. But actually really get into the complexity of it a bit. And then Ra and I are going to talk a little bit, and then we're going to have some questions from the crowd. And I really hope everyone does that, because it's awkward sometimes just standing up and not having that. So what is that journey? Where did it start? So for me, there's a motivation, there's a grit, right? There's great things never happen unless there's some awesome energy mixing together and rubbing together, and all kinds of great things happen, right? Our births start that way. Our companies start that way too, right? And the things that we work on. So I wanted to bring you back, basically to talk a little bit about my childhood and what are some of the deep motivating factors that have moved me in my life. And basically, it sort of all started with me witnessing firsthand some environmental destruction that was just very, very specific and personal to me. So So I grew up in New Jersey, in central Jersey, in a place called Martinsville. It's a suburb, upper middle class, all that stuff, privileged upbringing. But my backyard, that's where my house is that I grew up in. We were just there the other day visiting my parents, who are still there. And when I was born, I actually went back, because I'm a geek, and I found satellite imagery from very early on, early in my life, basically, some of the first satellite images of that area. And this is what it looked like. And note the big woods that's there. That woods is where I grew up. I played with turtles. I went out. I played almost every day running around in that woods. And I would be gone for hours. I'd come back covered in mud. My mom would be totally upset with me every single time, which was funny. But they still let me do it all the time. So unfortunately, when I graduated from high school, just to go back and forth, you can see that a huge development right behind my house started to happen. This is the growth and the march of our civilization and what we tend to do. Today, this is what that area looks like. This is from a Google Map view of it. Google Maps is great, but it also can help reinforce understanding some of this change and destruction, right, that has happened. So as a kid, I was really deeply impacted by this. I saw my playground, my woods, my sanctuary, if you will, completely destroyed. And that really made me angry as a kid. At the same time, my parents, every summer, we would pile in the family station wagon and drive around the country to go visit different national parks. And for me, that was probably one of the biggest gifts my parents ever gave me, because I was able to experience nature in all different types of forms and ecosystems along the way. This national park, it's a little hard to see with the lights, but does anyone know which national park this is? Pacific Northwest? It's Olympic National Park. Okay, so this is Seattle. And this area here is Olympic National Park. Olympic National Park has a very unique characteristic about it. It's amazing. It has every type of ecosystem you can imagine in North America, from rainforest to oceans to high tundra. But the other distinction it has, which is not so good, is that you can see the entire outline of it from space. If it was a little bit darker in the room, we'd be able to see a dark green shape that is exactly the shape of Olympic National Park. And as a child, we drove into this area called the Hoh Rainforest. And so has anyone been to Olympic National Park? My family, yes. That was an early trip. The beat goes on generationally, just to be clear. We do the same thing now. But Olympic National Park, when you drive into the Hoh Rainforest, and especially as a kid when I did, all of the national forest land that surrounds it was completely clear-cut. When you talk about the spotted owl and environmental devastation of sort of the 1990s, and a lot of what people were talking about was the logging that was taking place in this area. And so as you would drive through and get to the Hoh Rainforest, you drive through this basically desert, clear-cut desert that was just pretty crazy looking. But as a kid, I didn't really realize that until you got to the Welcome to the National Park sign, and right beyond it was the most gorgeous, dense, lush, rainforest, temperate rainforest that I've ever seen. And you go from this desert into this rainforest, and my question at the time was, what the hell happened? Like, what happened back there with all those tree stumps that I saw? And my parents, I have lots of issues with my parents, but one of the things they really did well was to make me question everything, right? So they told me, go ask the park ranger, right, and find out what happened. And when a park ranger told me what happened, I then was like, oh my, this is horrible, I need to be able to do something. And that park ranger said to me, he's like, well, you can do something about this. How cool is that, right? You can do something about it. And basically, very quickly, was just telling me that there are people out there who are fighting to save what the last remaining bits of forest in the world. I was like, I want to be one of those. And then how do I do that? And the Forest Service ranger said, ask your parents, right? So basically, fast forwarding a little bit, I got back to school that year. I was in the 4th grade, the same age as my son is right now. And basically, I started asking my teachers. I was writing angrily about what happened over the summer. I saw destruction of forests, and I saw this stuff. And luckily, I had a science teacher who actually hooked me into the environmental movement. And as a student, started connecting with other students all around the country, first in New Jersey and then around the country. And I helped start a nonprofit organization called the Student Environmental Action Coalition, which was sort of my first venture of scale, if you will. By the time the Student Environmental Action Coalition got to be sort of at scale, it was about 40,000 students nationwide. and I was not the founder of it, just to be clear. There's a large group of us around the country that were doing that. But that work was so influential on me in terms of understanding that I could actually do something, right? I could get involved, I could protest, I could write letters, I could organize other students. I had the ability to speak to people and get them all excited and as enraged as I was, and then charge off in a direction, right? But one of the things that I learned by doing this, which also became pretty foundational, was that really most of the people that were around me, those students that were around me and protesting and all the rest and waving signs, they really didn't understand the issues. They didn't know what they were actually protesting about, and I was really into it. I was really focused and learning, and others around me weren't. And I was frustrated as a kid with that. And it almost turned me off to activism. I actually had this moment where I was just like, you know what, this is all BS. Like, I need to go do my own thing. And it sort of hit me, and I'm not exactly sure how, but basically that maybe there was a way that I could help educate others, right? And make it a part of my thing, that maybe I wasn't so good on the front lines waving signs, because I got pretty angry and I got pretty frustrated doing that sometimes. But maybe I could be behind the scenes. And so luckily I went to Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh in 1991. So this is before the web existed. Email was a thing, but not much of a thing. And basically, what I did there was realize that there were all these students nationwide, and there's this thing called email and the internet that I could connect them with. And I basically started a mailing list. And to start that mailing list, and the first step that I had to take was to figure out how the hell do you start a mailing list, right? I'm not actually a programmer or any of that other stuff. I didn't know how to do it. And at that time, especially, there was no MailChimp or whatever, all the things that everyone uses now, right? So I had to use the resources at hand, look around and find the context for how I was going to take this thing forward. And what was it? It was bribing computer geeks with pizza and Coca-Cola, right? It turns out that is the way to form community at Carnegie Mellon University when you want to get people going. And so EnviroLink, a nonprofit organization that I developed, grew out of that. And once again, that's the acorn to the big tree. Along the way was incredible struggle, an incredible sort of like grit of how are we going to do this? How do I connect with all these people around the world? What are we going to do? What kind of information are we going to try to get across to people? And how are we going to reach them? How do we get people to join in? And I learned really early on, once again, before this website started up, this website, an earlier version of it, was one of the first .org websites ever created, just so you know. That's how early we were in all of this. So I had to convince the environmental movement, like this anti-technology sort of group, that they needed to use and take advantage of this amazing resource that was coming to be, which is the internet. So I'm not going to go through all the story, but just trust me. I got shouted down at conferences. I went out to speak places and I'm like, look, the internet is the thing. And everybody was just like, this is ridiculous. Technology isn't going to help us. Technology is only destroying us and all the rest. And it really wasn't until the WTO protests in Seattle, where I helped organize with a group whose name I'm now forgetting, which is terrible, Direct Action Group that organized a lot of ruckus. Thank you. So basically, I did a workshop on how we're going to take technology and how we're going to use it to literally move the crowd, right? How we're going to evade the police and report on where protests were happening and conflicts were happening so that reporters could get there and health workers from within the movement would be there to support people and all the rest. And it was one of the first times that we actually all started using text messaging. And text messaging at that point, once again, was this newfangled thing, but a bunch of us had phones, and that was great. And we started organizing using text messaging. And that type of group response where everybody was sort of equal, everybody could text everybody else, and reporting could happen from the crowd, if you will, was totally transformational for everybody involved. And all the larger environmental organizations started realizing, okay, this technology thing there might be something there. And certainly the grassroots activists got it right away, right? We could use this stuff for good. And for me, that was really exciting. So EnviroLink grew really nicely. We helped over 2,300 nonprofit organizations get their first websites, email addresses, email lists, and all that stuff. And it was literally the grind, just to be clear, right? It was not just 2,300 showed up and it was a great success. Every day we had to convince, talk, be out there, put ourselves out there, deal with all the tragedies that happen along the way of lack of success. And we just worked at it over many years. So But at the same time, for me, I was like, okay, this is cool. We've got the movement going. People are communicating, emails happening, and all that stuff. But there's still a problem that I was noticing out in the world, and that was I really wanted to help people. I really wanted to help the planet. But there was this thing out there that was crushing all of that, right? It's still crushing all of that, and that was profit-driven motives, right? Only wanting to pursue profit at all costs. And so for me, I saw this as a problem, and this is a problem that I wanted to help solve in some way. And I was young enough at that point, I think I was 22 or 3 or something like that when I started Green Marketplace, my company. But basically, how could we actually bring some balance? Profit is not a bad thing. And I just want to say that, right? All of you are, thank you. So let's just say it again. Profit is not a bad thing, okay? But profit, as far as I'm concerned, has to happen in balance with people and the planet. You can't do things in your business or in your venture or your nonprofit or whatever it is that you do in this world and only look at profit. Because guess what? It's actually not sustainable. And I don't even mean sustainable for the planet and people. It's not sustainable for itself, right? When you rape and pillage resources in order to move forward your personal agenda or that profit agenda of your company, that company cannot exist. It is not built on solid foundations. It's not. And so you can all look at big corporations, Walmart and all these others that are out there that are still continuing on that march towards destruction. But guess what? They're also on the march to their own destruction. And that is something that we see time and time again in large corporations when you really look at how they work. So anyway, I wanted to get to something called the triple bottom line. And I decided that the way to do that was I was going to sell socially and environmentally responsible products. I wanted to help people, just like those activists on the front line, I wanted to help people on the front line, consumers on the front line, to try to figure out how they could buy products that were socially and environmentally responsible. And at the same time, make money so that we can continue doing that and keep the dream alive and the vision alive for the company. And so basically, I'm going to go very quickly through this. I hate bullets on screens, but we basically built a company called Green Marketplace. It was the first e-commerce company in the natural product space. We started it in 1996, 6 months after Amazon got started. So they were the world's largest bookstore, and we were going to be the world's largest natural products, like place to get healthy products that were good for you and you knew where they came from. So we had all kinds of cool things that we did as a company. And basically, the biggest part that, the highlight of this was transparency. Bringing transparency and then introducing e-commerce to people at the same time was a bit of a challenge in 1996, just to be clear. But the way that we rolled it out and the way that we sort of got out into the world was, first of all, starting with our manufacturers. They were our core community that we had to get on board for this thing, or the entire thing wouldn't take off. And so we went to 7th Generation, which at the time was a really cool small company, and has gone through a bunch of iterations since. But at the time, Jeffrey Hollander, who's the founder of 7th Generation, helped me understand a business I didn't know anything about, which was mail order fulfillment. He also helped me figure out the business model, which is that basically we would provide free e-commerce, this new emerging thing, to all the manufacturers that we'd work with. We'd do all of their fulfillment of their orders online, give them direct contact with their end customers, building their community and strength. So there's a huge value to the manufacturers. They, in turn, all they had to do was to give us their product on consignment. So one of the biggest costs associated with a mail order company is all the inventory that you have to keep on hand, right? We had no inventory cost whatsoever. We only paid people after we sold the product. So once we figured out the value proposition that we were providing to the manufacturers, this is a really important point. In order to build community of any sort, to get your market going, you have to provide value to the people that you're trying to serve and work with. And sometimes, first, it's not the people you want to sell to. First, you have to do it with the community that you're trying to build with. So then the question was, how were we going to do marketing? We had no money. We bootstrapped the company. We didn't raise any venture capital or anything like that, which everybody else at the time was doing. This is the time of sock puppets during the Super Bowl and stuff like that, right? That we were emerging. People were spending millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars advertising, pushing, trying to get their brand out there. And we decided, you know what? No. We're going to do this by word of mouth. This is going to be an old-fashioned company, even though we're in this new realm. And we are going to get our customers, the consumers that wanted these products, that were finding us originally through the manufacturers' websites, and then coming into Green Marketplace and learning, wow, there's all this other stuff out there, we decided to make them the voice. Once again, 1996 to 1999 is sort of like the time we were building up this marketing. There was no crowdfunding, there was no crowdsourcing, there was none of the stuff that people were talking about at that time. So we did that, and we didn't spend any money at all on marketing. What we did is to go to where the customers already were, right? We knew everything there was to know about who the target customer was. It was women between the ages of 35 and 55. Didn't matter whether they had kids or not, but they were professionals, okay? And I could actually go on for about an hour telling you all the different characteristics of those women in that place, where they lived, how they shopped, what they liked, the colors they liked, all that stuff, because we got to know our customer really, really, really well, okay? And I'll be highlighting some endpoints, but that's a big one. You have to know who your customer is, and you have to know what they do, not just where they are, that they use Facebook. That doesn't matter. How do they use Facebook? Why do they use Facebook? What colors should you be putting into your posts so, for the photos that you put up so that it'll actually attract in the types of people that want that? And how do you figure all that out? You ask them. Just talk to people who find pockets of where your customers are going to be. For us, they were already members of nonprofit organizations. They were already buying their phone service through Working Assets, which is now called Credo. But at the time, it was like the activist phone company that everybody who was cool and motivated to do something was joining. They were shopping at Whole Foods, where Whole Foods existed. Once again, 1996 to 99, Whole Foods was just emerging as a thing. And then we discovered something else. Those were the obvious people to partner with. But National Wildlife Federation, for example, which had the largest mail order catalog at the time reaching this audience, wouldn't talk to us, right? Because who are we, right? And this internet thing, everyone just called in on the phone and ordered from a paper catalog. So we found other pockets. So we learned that the women 35 to 55 at that time were pet owners. Like serious pet owners. These are the people who are obsessed with their pets and their health of their pets. And they actually came to natural health and natural products through their pets, right? By making sure that their pets weren't encaged in a place that had toxic cleaning products and things like that, right? So what did we do? We started going to every single pet-related conference, gathering thing that we could find. And what we found was actually the first group that took us on was the South Florida, it's important, South Florida Ferret Owners Society. So personally, I will admit, I'm not a big fan of ferrets, okay? But at that time, I loved ferrets, right? And the health of the ferret was really important, okay? And ferrets were super sensitive to chemicals, so you need to make sure you had non-toxic cleaning products, that you bedded their stuff with non-chlorinated paper and all kinds of stuff like that, right? I knew everything there was to know about healthy ferrets. And to date, well, not to date, we'll get to the punchline in a second, but basically the South Florida Ferret Society was the biggest affiliate of RISA through the entire time, even after we were able to get the National Wildlife Federation with their 5 million subscriber list. The South Florida Ferret Society produced more revenue for Green Marketplace than any other partner that we had, right? The power is in the niche. When you understand the niche that you're going after and accept that it's a niche and accept that you're not going to be everything to everybody and you focus, you can achieve amazing results. But it's hard, just to be clear. It's not fast, it's not quick, and you got to learn to love ferrets and other things like that. Okay. So in 2002, and once again, this is the oak now, right? This is the amazing thing that everybody talks about. I sold the company. And I was able to sell the company successfully to Gaiam, which still exists. Gaiam is a huge brand in healthy lifestyle and products. They sell yoga balls and yoga videos and all kinds of stuff. And when they acquired Green Marketplace, that was the thing that everyone focused on. Along the way, people ignored all the articles that had been written about us in Fortune and Time and Entrepreneur Magazine and all these places about the weird way that we were doing business. And all of those articles talked about the way that we conducted our business, that we were a socially responsible business, that we had a baby-friendly workplace, that we had dogs in the workplace, which at the time was a weird thing, that we worried a lot about the workers in our warehouse, which is a partnership with Goodwill Industries, and we reinforced our messaging all the way through so that our customers online, we had more loyal customers, not number-wise, but percentage loyalty, than Amazon did at the time. And the thing that I was most proud of out of the sale was not the money and not the, the business press and all the rest around the sale, but was that Amazon actually came to us and looked me up and my team, and we brought my team together to do consulting for Amazon about how they could actually incorporate some of these practices into their business, right? It turns out our warehouse is run by, it was a partnership with Goodwill Industries in Pittsburgh, and that people working in our warehouse all had different types of disabilities. It turns out if you have OCD, it is a really good thing for you to work in a warehouse picking and packing stuff, right? You can save a company a lot of money by being very obsessed about making sure that all the right things got into the right boxes. Our error rates, all this stuff. There's all kinds of cool things like that where social good led to business amazingness, okay? And that's the story of Green Marketplace. So just moving forward quickly, and I want to make sure I don't run over time, and I want to make sure we have questions. So basically, fast forward to the next acorn of an idea. So I'd just sold my company. My daughter, Olivia, who's in the back of the room, had just been born. I thought I would be a stay-at-home dad. And Kathleen can tell you the look on her face when I just said that. It was just bad idea. So basically, I had to go find something else to do, right? And my passion still was about helping people get access to data and information and helping them make better decisions as a result. And so basically, Ryza was born. Okay, and I can say now, Ryza, the oak tree of Ryza as it stands right now, we just raised $3 million in venture capital after being in operation for 11 years. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. We went from 11 employees at the beginning of this year. We're now at 30, and I think the 31st may start next week. No joke. We are going through epic scaling growth right now. But you could just look at a snapshot of us and say, oh, wow, epic growth, and he raised all this money, and oh, that's awesome, and it's easy for white guys to raise money, and all that stuff, right? I mean, because that's a thing, right, that exists in the world. I didn't experience that, just to be clear. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, right? And, I had no access and didn't network and didn't go to parties, cocktail parties with the venture capital people because I never did that, right? I built Ryza up, and on my team that I surrounded myself with built Ryza up. We started in 2003, right? And it's 2014. It's almost 11 years later. And that journey was beyond crazy. One of the things I didn't mention about Green Marketplace that I have to acknowledge, because Kathleen's in the room, I couldn't have started Green Marketplace. I had no salary when I started Green Marketplace. This was a huge leap off of a cliff with, we were wanting to have kids, we were just getting started, we had just bought a house, like all that stuff. And we were entirely living off of Kathleen's stable salary, which is, thank you. And it's interesting because with Ryza, once again, it was also sort of a huge leap. I was not well known. I was known in the tree-hugging business sort of circles, right, out there. I went to Social Venture Network and met amazing people like Lori and Ron, all others here. But I wasn't known in the database world, right, in the business world as like the data guy or knowing anything about this. And when we started in 2003, big data wasn't even a thing. People putting stuff in the cloud wasn't a thing. I can't tell you how many meetings we went to with businesses where they're like, wait a minute, you're not Oracle, right? Oracle is the database company that like everybody uses. Why would I buy your stuff? And we worked for years trying to overcome that major hurdle of getting accepted out in the marketplace. And it really wasn't until about 2008 that we had a stable enough platform that we were incubated at this technology research lab, and that we spun the company out into its own thing. And we went out into the world and we're like, we are gonna make a ton of money building software. Guess what? That works with communities that I love. Right? We were working with social service agencies all around the country, helping them do information referral, because they were the only sector that would actually embrace this new way of looking at data and interacting with it and all the rest. And so social services was going to be the thing, and we're going to build a really profitable business off of social services. Okay, turns out that's a really bad idea. And so what we did was constantly have to reinvent ourselves. We were pivoting, we were moving, we were agile, we were just dancing all over the place. Lori sat through a lot of it. My wife certainly heard all of it. And the whole point of Ryza and where we got to was that we were trying to do something new in the marketplace in a new way. I think that should resonate with what you're doing. Okay? It doesn't matter that I was selling databases and new ways of doing things. It's something new in the marketplace, and the marketplace wasn't quite ready for it, right? It was on the cusp of it, but it wasn't quite ready for it. It took us at least 4 major pivots, 5 times when we were about a week or 2 away from going out of business. I still get choked up, sorry. So those times, right, when you are crashing towards the oblivion, right, those are the moments that determine whether you're an entrepreneur or not, right? And we can talk about humanity and people and being a great person, all the rest. You can do all of that. But my dad actually gave me this advice. As the plane, and it's a horrible one now with all the crashing of planes, this is before 9/11 they first did this, but as your plane or roller coaster, whatever it is flying towards the ground, right? And you are able to, right before the end, have the optimism and the stick-to-itiveness, basically, to pull up, right? And to basically just barely scrape the ground and find another way up into the air. That is what being an entrepreneur is about. That's the fun, the grit, the thrill, the energy, the emotion that comes out of all of that stuff. That's what makes us what we do, right? And if you can't do that, if that's not your thing, if you don't believe enough and you're not passionate enough in the thing that you're trying to do and accomplish in the world, it's okay, right? Maybe you're not meant to be an entrepreneur right now. Maybe that's something a little bit later. But if you have it in your DNA, if you're drawn to it like the ocean is to the moon, right? You can't stop it. You have to keep going. You have to. And so with Ryza and Green Marketplace, all these, the story has been the pivots. And finally, 2 years ago, after doing some of the most amazing work that I've ever done, working with tribes in Brazil, out in the middle of the Amazon, helping them collect data and to verify for the government that they could actually claim their territory, which is like, wow, that was awesome work, meaningful. All of that had to come to an end for us for a time being. And the reason is the recession. All of the nonprofit funding, all of the government funding that we had, everything dried up. And it dried up for us in about a month. So we had a month to take a team of 8 people and figure out what the hell were we going to do. And basically, and Lori and I talk about this all the time. I don't even know what to describe, in terms of the phone calls that you get sometimes. But basically, opportunity just showed up. And I never, and I will never allow an entrepreneur around me to call it luck, right? Entrepreneurs are never lucky. Anyone who thinks we're lucky has not walked a day in our shoes. But there is some divine thing, and I don't know what it is. I don't even know how to describe it. That amazing things happen when you're willing to face towards the oblivion. And for me, that call came from Google. Literally, we had done a project at the time where we were playing around with some data and tracking the flu, and I'm not going to go into that whole story, but we just did something for fun as a company. We knew we were going out of business, and literally, I remember Mike Higgins, our CTO, saying, you know what? If we're going to go out, and we've got 3 more weeks of funding, right, sitting in the bank, screw it, we're going to do something fun. Let's go out and just have fun doing it. And so we built this website, and it turns out it took off. It was crowdsourcing. It was all kinds of stuff. And Google called us. And they're like, how the heck did you do that? Was their question. We had hacked a whole bunch of the Google Maps code, basically, and done things with it they had never seen before. Because we were just, once again, not following the rules and having fun. And so basically, what ended up happening is Google, the giant arm of Google, we thought, wow, maybe they'll hire all of us. Maybe that's what we could get out of this. And that could be the landing point. I remember talking to Lori about it, and Lori told me, no, someday you're going to buy Google. You said that to, I think you were the first person to say that to me, Lori. And so the point was, great, what can we do? And I was flown out to California and a bunch of my team, and we did this big presentation in front of everybody. And guess what? Everyone was like, wow, that's really great. Congratulations, pat us on the back. And they all started walking out of the room. And nobody was staying to talk and to say, here's your check, or here's a job, or we're going to hire you to do whatever. And I remember there was a moment where literally everyone walked out of the room, and my team and I all looked at each other. We were like, oh. It was like this kind of moment. And I remember basically, we were all like, what are we going to do? And I remember there was this woman that I was making eye contact with during the whole presentation. Like, she was just totally like doing this and just totally engaged and loving it. I'm like, how could she not offer me a job? I mean, come on. So what I did is, it was like one of these things that you hear about, like, you know, a pushy ant doing or something like that. But I literally ran out the room and chased her down. Okay, and I actually went through a security barricade and like set off an alarm, and no joke, and I did this. I was so intense, right? Because I was like, I had to save the whole company, like, and you're the only one left to do it. And luckily, she wasn't completely freaked out by this guy who, like, just, you know, with the alarms going off and security starting to come in, no joke. And basically, I was able to say, look, I know you got what we're doing and the passion that we have for it. And we really have a huge passion for what you do, and we really want to work with you. What can we do for you? That was the question. And that's a question you should be asking. If you're a business owner, you should be asking every client, every potential person, everyone, every day. If you don't ask that question multiple times a day, you are in deep trouble, because you do not have your pulse on what people actually need, and you're not listening. So when we did that, she actually was like, oh yeah, actually, there's a few different projects that we could bring you on, and how soon could your team start? Because we got some deadlines that are coming up. I'm like, how's tomorrow? And I remember calling my wife and basically saying, you know what, I'm gonna stay in California a few extra days, we're gonna make this happen, and then I'm gonna come back and I might still have a job, right, at that time. And basically, that led to a whole series of events. Once again, let's just fast forward through, to a point where we were then discovered by Comcast. So evil, big company that's like horrible to its customers and all the things that we hear. Quite frankly, that's not been my experience, okay? And what we saw at Comcast was the same exact thing, and in fact, it was worse, that we had seen when we were working with tribes in the Amazon that had first contact with technology and people 40 years ago, right? And technology was a whole new thing. And basically, what you had were executives who were going out and trying to sell advertising at Comcast, literally using sticks and rocks, right? Really spreadsheets. But they were trying to convince a data-driven argument as to why you should buy, you as a business owner should buy an ad on Comcast and why it's better for your business to do that. And the fact of the matter is, for small businesses, and this is not an advertisement for Comcast, but I will tell you, they were right. They were doing the good work. They just didn't have the tools to be able to tell that story effectively. And so what we did is we, once again, pivoted our company because this massive client came along. And I can tell you, so that was 3 or 4 years ago probably. Last year, Comcast made they married us. They made a 5-year commitment to us, multi-million-dollar commitment that basically guaranteed the future of our company, right? That's the oak, awesome. But I can tell you, getting there, communicating effectively within Comcast, Lori's just laughing, she knows, was literally some of the hardest stuff I had to do. When people are so ingrained in the culture and our society and how they operate, the power dynamics that happen when you're sitting at one of the largest media companies in the world and one of the smallest software companies you've ever seen comes along, and basically their instinct automatically is like to swat at you like a fly and crush you. And every single person in that company is doing that to you, yet they also need what you have, right? That's the struggle that we went through. And that's the struggle we continue to go through every day as we start to work with more and more media companies and larger brands. And yes, we are now on a position and on a road where we have deep roots into the earth. This upcoming week, one of the reasons I'm here is I'm keynoting at Adweek, and I'm going to be presenting to all these advertising executives about how they can use data for, data-driven change and all the rest. And what is the most awesome thing about that invitation and the speech and all the rest is that I was invited by my customer to do that, right? My customer believes so much in the vision that we hold as a company that they're willing to give up their own keynote spot. Like, they sponsored the whole thing, and they really should have had one of their executives up. They wanted me to go up there and represent instead. And that's awesome. That's validation. That feels really good. But it only feels good to me because of that sort of journey along the way. So anyway, we have lots of big customers that we work with now and have worked with. It wasn't always this way. It was a lot of nonprofits and all the rest. And basically, the company, we're finding our way, and we continue to find our way on a daily basis. So what I'd like to do, if I can, just in interest of time, is just to summarize some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. And I've tried to talk about these and share these in our story, but the first one is you have to be clear about your mission. What is your personal mission? What is the thing that you want to do in this world? What are the values that you can extract from that mission that are deep to your core that you can infuse into your business and make it reek of your values? You want it to be like garlic, right? It can't go away. It is impossible to get rid of those values and missions. They can change over time. You can add some other spices in, that's good. But the core values of what you are, you have to believe them to your core. And they have to go deep down into the ground and root deeply, and need to go deep out into the universe, and you need to be it. And if you can't be it, you got to work on it. And that's what some of you are here to do, and that is awesome. It's why I'm here talking on a Saturday morning for, when it's my son's birthday. I love this stuff. So know what problem you're solving. If you can't speak to a very specific problem that you have a very specific, I didn't say unique, specific solution to, it's totally okay if there are other people trying to solve that same problem in different ways, maybe in the same way. It's okay, guess what? The world's a really big place. You can't possibly have every client in a specific vertical that you're in. Okay. And then this is the really big one. This is what we all forget to do. We think we're going to serve everybody all the time. Everybody needs to have nutrition. I heard somebody, I forget who it was, I'm sorry, but somebody was doing nutrition and talking about integrating into your lifestyle. Of course we all need it. The entire planet needs it. But there are some people who are ready for it first, right? And it's not that they're more privileged or more, but they get it. And they are the target audience you should go after. They're the type of people that show up at yoga studios. They're the type of people that buy from certain types of companies that you could buy a mailing list from for fairly cheap, for example. They're the type of people that show up online and are totally passionately talking about these issues in forums and Twitter and all those other places. If you know who they are, you can know where they are and where you need to be to reach them. So you have to go where they already are. And then the most important thing, and this is something that I really, to this audience, want to talk about, you have to be authentic. So often, we believe that we have to make up for the difference, the gap between where we are and our beliefs, which are a little bit different and kind of weird, maybe, to the quote-unquote mainstream society. And to bridge that gap, we need to start acting more like this, and we need to have a persona online that is just like this, and I'm not ever going to show a crack. It's all going to be glossy because that's the way that Colgate and I don't know, why am I missing big brands? Walmart, all these places have big, slick, fancy brands. Do you know that these big companies, they have teams of social media experts, right? Sitting in a room crafting every single word that's going to appear in every single tweet. You could do that, but you're going to drive yourself crazy, right? Instead, you could just have the persona is just you. Be yourself. Wow. And all of that has to, once again, reek through all of your marketing and everything. You have to just ooze it. People have to be able to feel it. Because guess what? Just the words you write alone aren't enough in a tweet. There's this thing that happens when you're reading somebody's Twitter feed. It happens to me, and I think it happens to lots of us, where you just sort of, there's like a spark, right? There's an energetic thing. I don't know what it is. Others who are more attuned to these things will, probably have lots of great explanations for it. But there is a thing where you connect with that person in a way that is just totally different than you do to whoever's, tweeting for PNC Bank that day, right? And you need to own it. So the other part that we all, and this is a dirty little secret in the socially responsible business movement, we got to the point in the socially responsible business movement where it was just enough to make a product or service that was green, that was socially responsible, that was awesome. It was hand-woven by, women in indigenous villages and who are using, all these amazing things are happening. Wow, oh my God, I want to buy that product. But the core, the roots of those companies were rotting. They were treating and operating themselves in the exact same way that big corporations do, because once again, if you wanted money from banks or loans or venture capital or whatever else, you had to give in, right, and do it a certain way. And basically, if you can build your values into your business, even a software company that's working for Comcast, right? When people come in to get interviewed by our company, they look around and they're like, this is different, right? We don't actually have ping pong tables and all that other crap, right, that a lot of software companies do. But what we have are people who are totally committed to what they're doing, who are treated with respect. We have amazing benefits that we offer people, and we're able to, and that was a core value that we decided to do from the beginning. We have the ability to have babies in the workplace. We have amazing, things for families and support people without families or whatever. And it turns out we're a software company. 50% of our employees, and as of last week, 50% of our employees are women, which is unheard of. 45% of our engineering team are women as well, right? Totally unheard of. And so for us, that is just walking the talk. So these are my words of wisdom. I think that's the end of it. Oh yeah, the last one, most important. It takes time. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight at all, ever. The YouTube guys, and I don't even know their names. No one really does. But they started the company, and 8 months later sold for $1 billion to Google, right? That doesn't happen. That's lightning striking. Okay. So let's not even if you want, put the lightning pole out there, right? But make sure it's grounded. Make sure you know where you're going, so that when it's ready to take off, you can. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So let's open it up to you all. The first thing I want to say, if we could put your last slide.
Sure.
If y'all don't get nothing else, please, right, get these down. Get this down. One of the things when we had our conversation, we talked a lot about, I said, we have to break open this bang zoom perception around success, right? Because we hear it all the time in movie crowd. We talk to entrepreneurs all the time, and they want the Gabby Bernstein. They want, can I be honest, y'all, right? They want the, you name it, right? The Malik Yoba. They want the this, they want the that. And it's what you said. There's no journey in the mythology. That's right. Of success. And so what I want to invite, because some people are really just beginning. How many people are like, you're just getting started, right?
Yay.
Right? Come on, real talk, Lori, right? I want to give you a high five. It's like the truth telling, right? Because it's not like about age. It's not like but we have an ego thing sometimes, right? We sit in the room, or we want to stand in the back. We don't want to come in the front where the nectar is. You know what I'm saying, right? Just real talk. We're all at where we are, and it's all perfect, right? So I want to talk a little bit about if you're just getting started. And some people, you've been at it for a little while, and it's not moving the way it needs to be moving. Real talk, right? Honesty, right? So I want you to talk a little bit to that part of the room, right? And then it's happening, and you're scared shitless. Right? And I love that you raised your hand for all three. Because that's what it is to be an entrepreneur. Every facet of what you have 27 facets of things going on. And some things are going really well, and some things are going really shitty. That's part of the journey, right? So I just want to gauge the room so you have a feel. But I'd love for you to talk a little bit about if you're just getting started, and then I want to invite you questions. You're just getting started.
So I think the core thing of getting started with a business is believing in it, right? And believing in it enough to take that leap, right? Because if you're not willing to take that leap into it and just fall into it, and it's not fall, I don't know if that's the right thing, but just gently fall into your business. That leap that you have to make, we were talking, you and I were talking about rappelling. So I'm not a big mountain climber or anything like that, but I've done rock climbing a little bit. And the scariest thing I've ever done in my life, I've done in my life, is that first step when you're rappelling off of a cliff. And I don't know if who's experienced it or not, but that goes against everything that you're supposed to believe in, right? You're not supposed to do that. And yet you're drawn to it in some way, right? My family and I, the woods that we live near in Pittsburgh now, there's snakes there, right? There's really no poisonous snakes. But once again, and I have a thing, I'm known in the neighborhood, I'm like the guy who picks up the snake, right? And I'm like, that's what I do. And my kids now do that too. My daughter especially is just like, just the last week was like, touching a 5-foot-long black rat snake. It was amazing, right? Just into the yard. But the whole point is, you're not supposed to do that, right? That's just like the type of thing your body, everything viscerally says snakes are going to harm you. And starting a business is the same way, right? You're going into lack of stability. If you have a family or not, you're throwing your whole financial life into turmoil. You could literally lose everything, and you can, right? Bankruptcy, especially if you're not incorporated in the right way, like is one of the worst things that can happen financially to somebody. It's really bad, right? And many of us, and even I mean, I grew up certainly in middle class, upper middle class neighborhood, but it wasn't like I got a big check from my family or something like that to help me start. Like I had to build my own business, and so when you're trying to do that, you have to forego good meals, sometimes meals altogether, you vacation, all the things that you might want to do, and that's hard. So just owning that and knowing that, and knowing that you're in the middle of that right now. So if you're just starting your business, you're just starting the fall, right? And it's a good fall. It's a fall that, like, if you do it well, lands you in the right spot in the river, and like you're going to take off and go. But that, once again, I'm doing it myself. That's the acorn right to the oak tree. Along the way in that path, everyone has doubts. Everyone has doubts and gets nervous and wonders if this is the right thing, no matter what scale of business you're at. So if you're at a small scale of business, just go for it. It's everyone else, we've done it before. And then all the rest of the stuff that I've already said, I don't want to necessarily repeat.
Okay, yep.
Hello.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
I'm really interested in the question of authenticity and engagement marketing, and I find that, like, in my personal Facebook page, I love pouring my heart out, and I embrace vulnerability, and I find so much joy and strength in it. And then when it comes to my company, I have this kind of like, I need to seem like it's not mostly just me, or
Yep.
I only want to serve what's vulnerable in service of my core message.
Yep.
And I kind of am feeling a little bit stuck in terms of how do I take the vulnerability that I love expressing when I show up fully, just being like, I'm only Annie, I don't need to be representing my brand right now, versus when I'm trying to speak for my brand, and
Yep.
I'm like, how much do I share, how much, and do I only share when it is going to add up to the aha moment that I want my audience to have, or is it just me showing up? And I think I'm just curious.
So yeah, no, it's a really good question, and I'll be honest and frank. I don't post everything that's going on in my life to Facebook or Twitter. What I try to do is to post the things that I think are actually going to resonate from what I believe out to the audience that I'm trying to reach, and that's a hard balance. And I think a lot of people, especially in our space, it's a pendulum, sort of, right, that tends to go towards oversharing. That is a sort of using it almost as a way to heal thyself through expression, in social media and all the rest. There's a purpose and a place for that, and maybe your audience is the right audience for that, but that's not been my audience, right? The people that I'm trying to reach. But at the same time, I still make sure it's me, right? And that's actually the important piece. So on my Facebook feed, I will, friend pretty much anyone, who I know through business or not. Twitter, the same thing, and I share all kinds of stuff on Twitter. They're pretty strong political beliefs, because that's me. I share things that are, opinions that I have about things, because that's also me. I share things that are directly relevant to my industry and the space I'm supposed to be in. And then every once in a while, I'll throw in something, just totally personal, and just that reminds people that I'm a person too, right? And we're trying to connect through this very digital, non-personal realm as people. And it is, just to be clear, it's not loosey-goosey for me. I actually curate fairly well my online presence in terms of how I do it. I encourage everybody to do that too. It's very important, I think. The question is just how far do you go? And that's knowing the core audience of who you're trying to reach, right? And if you can resonate to that frequency that they're on, then that's going to make them loyal, and that's going to help expand beyond your current base.
We have time to take, actually, if I could take a couple more questions. And here's the thing, you all,
I'm going to be around,
yeah. He's going to be hanging out, so you'll be able to get to. So let's go, Gail, and then Alessandra.
My question goes a little bit to what she's asking. I've been a long time journalist, and I have a byline. I've had a byline in all the majors and all. But that was my day job, and and I become a media consultant. Now I'm switching over to take my profession more to a healing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm using a different pen name, and to me that's my more authentic self, who I am in this journey at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you, especially with so much social media, I already have a presence, then I'm gonna have the pen name presence, like how do you work that out?
I don't know. What I can tell you.
And it goes to what you said, because it's like, I don't want people to say, well, she's schizophrenic, she
Right.
this and
So
that.
let's talk schizophrenia as a business owner, right? So Green Marketplace, in the early days of Green Marketplace, I was any one of 5 different names that would respond to customer service inquiries, because the idea of having the founder of the company be the one that was responding to you at that time I thought was a bad idea, right? In our blog on our website, right, I have written a bunch of stuff. Others finally in the company are starting to also generate content, and that's really good, and I encourage that. But for a long time, you would just see Riza staff, right? Anytime you saw Riza staff, it was kind of me. Right, and I didn't want to seem like the CEO out there just self-promoting all the time. In terms of actual different, like everyone knows me as Josh Knauer, or that jerk or whatever it might be, But like the point is that it's not. I don't know. When I said I don't know, I really don't know how to make that balance work. But probably letting one go and sort of blending it into the other, redirecting people, if you will. Both through message and mechanically is probably the way that I would suggest to do it.
I think there's a transition plan in there, Gail, and a common
Yes.
thread that wants to be identified that enables you to authentically build the arc over time. We can talk more about that, but that's, yeah.
Because my picture's out there too, so if I want to
Yeah.
show my face again, it's kind of crazy.
So we're going to take one more focus question, and then we are going to need to break. So, Alessandra.
So I'll give an update later in the day, but I'm facilitating women's circles and have been learning a lot about my ideal client, and it so excites me that you're talking about the niche, how important that is. But my general question is, how do you get so specific? Like, how do you get South Florida ferret specific?
Mm-hmm.
In whatever, like, however that crosses over to whatever the industry is. So
Yeah.
I'm working with young women living in the city, but then I'm like, oh, well, what perfume do they wear and what magazines do they read? And everyone is unique. So there's no, like, so far there hasn't been like this perfect.
So we'd all love to believe, right? And in our circles especially, we talk about the uniqueness of everybody, and we're all snowflakes and whatever. Snowflakes in terms of unique. Sorry, that was totally. So the point is, we're kind of not, okay? And I don't mean to be negative in that. I'm not saying it in a negative way. There are common themes, right, that bring us all together. Everyone in this room comes from a slightly different background all the way, but we're here, right? And we're here at this event to learn and grow and transform. And guess what? People who are alike along different threads that are not normally the way. Marketing, by the way, just the history of marketing in 2 seconds has been all about race, gender, age, and income. That's it, right? And so if you can break beyond that, you are way ahead of the game, instantly, okay? So we're all different ages and races and genders and I don't know what else, ages. I think I said that already. Anyway, so the point is, but what are the things that tie us together, that bring us to this point, right? And for the people that you're trying to reach, those young women in the inner city and whatever, sorry, I'm not trying to diminish it, but just, whatever it might be, where do they go, right? Where do they actually all show up at the same time that they're drawn to? And you need to be there ahead of them, right? And be there to hold space with them and to understand and talk to them. And that literally may mean, and we'll just make it more general at this point, not to your specific example, but if you need to show up at the yoga studio in your small town, which is where progressive, cool people interested in their own health show up, You should. You should talk to the owner of that studio and figure out how can you actually jointly present and add value to the yoga studio, right? Not just to you, but how are you giving value to the partner that you want to partner with? And figure that out. That could be online, that could be in a hashtag, that could be, in physical space like this. And making those connections and then building community around it, rather than just me as the expert, is totally the way to do it.
So, you all, deep breath. Final thoughts, final words.
I've spoken enough. I can't wait to engage with you guys and to hear your stories and to answer your questions and all the rest. The one thing they'll ask for an exclusion on is I have to leave after lunch so I can spend the rest of the day with my son and family for his birthday. But I'll be here through lunch and happy to talk. I love talking to people at these events. So just bring it on.
Can we give him some love? I'm going to bring back up Jay. She's going to set us up for a break. Josh will be around during the break. He'll be around during the mastermind. You heard him, right?
Yep.
Around 3 months. So thank you, Josh. We love you.
Thank you so much.
Give him some more love.